here to better understand the Vibrio bacteria. And of course, as usual, this image is provided by Sketchy Micro, so be sure to check them out. So, the Vibrio bacteria, they are typically found in Southeast Asia, especially cholera species, because it is endemic in developing countries. And some general features of the Vibrio genus is that they are gram-negative bacteria. They have curved / comma-shaped rods with polar flagella. And you can kind of see over here how the rods are curved or comma-shaped and the flagella are quite polar. And then to remember this, think about the comma-shaped mustache on the kernel. So here's the comma-shaped mustache on the kernel and the curved raft on the river that is red. So a curved raft in the river that is red, as shown over here. And that also has a rope to symbolize the flagella. And it's red because it symbolizes the gram-negative feature of the Vibrio bacteria. And then the bacteria is also oxidase positive. So to remember this, think about the blue ring on the kernel, as shown over here. So these are members of the Vibrionidae family, and they actually grow in alkaline environments because they do not particularly like the acidic environments. So to remember this, think about the base and the title over here, and then the drinking lemon water right over here to show the acid lability of this bacteria, because once again they prefer to be in alkaline environments and do not like the acidic environments. And then lastly, they happen to grow on thiosulfate citrate bile salt sucrose medium, or TCBS. And when they do so, they turn orange, and this is because they ferment sucrose. So once again, they grow in TCBS, which stands for thiosulfate citrate bile salt sucrose medium, and they're responsible for fermenting sucrose. And don't forget that they love alkaline environments. So let's talk about the Vibrio parahaemolyticus along with the Vibrio vulnificus. So both are actually transmitted by consumption of raw seafood and cause watery diarrhea as a result. And then the Vibrio vulnificus can also cause rapidly spreading cellulitis that may be difficult to treat, so keep that in mind. To remember the association of raw seafood consumption with infection by the Vibrio parahaemolyticus and Vibrio vulnificus, think about the oysters that are sitting next to the kernel, as shown over here. So, Vibrio cholera, on the other hand, has been subdivided into an Tutor subtype and a cholera subtype. It's also known as the 010 type. But anyways, there are two subtypes, the cholera and the EL subtype. And the distinguishing features for the Vibrio cholera are that they have shooting star motility that is inactivated by a specific serum. So just imagine some shooting stars. That's how they travel. And for reservoir, they can be found in the human colon, and they can transiently be carried by the shellfish contaminated in the water, but those are not necessarily the true reservoirs. On the other hand, the human carriage may persist after untreated infection for months after the wants to say